Tonight we're in Yeovil, and welcome to Question Time. And we're actually not precisely in Yeovil. We're in the Fleet Air Arm Museum at Yeovilton, which is just outside Yeovil. Let's have our first question, which comes from Victoria McGregor.
Would you still make a donation to Oxfam?
Faiza Shaheen, what do you think?
That what we've heard over the last week is incredibly disappointing. I hear it when people say that I'm not sure if I should give money anymore. The thing is, of course, and it's absolutely right that those in senior positions and those involved should consider their positions. But the big thing is, of course, is that despicable people cannot stop good people from doing good work and doing good deeds. This is humanitarian work. We are humans. We need to retain that. We need to fight for that. I totally agree that the development agencies need to do a lot more. And look, for the last few months, we've heard a lot about the abuse of power. We've heard about it in Hollywood, we've heard about it in Parliament, and we've heard about it in sports. And this is just another place where that societal problem is clear. That when you give people too much power, they can abuse that. Not always, of course, but they can abuse that. So we need to do a lot more on the safeguards, and we need to do a lot more to make sure that some of what happened in terms of, not being known that this guy was managed to get another job afterwards, that can't happen again. And that's the sort of thing we need to make sure they do now. So what I would say to you is if Oxfam and other development agencies can't show that they are making that difference, they are shifting their funds and shifting the way that they are doing things, then that's the point at which you say, OK, look, they haven't changed
Can I just
their
put
ways.
to you a quotation from the Oxfam Staff Training Manual and ask you whether you think this is a proper or adequate answer to this? It was written in 2006, and it says, "We haven't banned the use of prostitutes, but we strongly discourage it." Is that enough?
No, I mean, I don't think that's enough.
What do you think they should be saying?
Well, look, it just shouldn't have happened. They shouldn't be using prostitutes. Look, I worked for Save the Children for just 18 months, and the issues that are coming out here of quite macho environments are things that, of course, are there in this sector, and I saw them. And there was a bigger issue, and I completely support the use of foreign aid, and we need to think about... I was there when the Ebola outbreak happened, and you think about people that go there and help people. I mean, they're heroes often, and we often find that if we hadn't have made those interventions at that time, can you imagine what would have happened if that disease had spread further? So it's really worth that investment.
All right.
But there's a lot of change that does need to happen within the development sector, and this is the time to do it.
All right. But I'll take this question now, please, from Ruth Binney. Ruth Binney, please.
If biscuits and other highly processed foods are damaging the nation's health, isn't it time for them to be taxed?
Yes, this is based, I think, on this report today, isn't it? The French government saying people who use highly processed foods are more likely to get cancer.
There's obviously an issue about the way in which corporations and food businesses behave when they are given these regulations, and there's obviously more we can do on that front. There's obviously the other side of this equation, which is people's pockets. Part of the reason that they will go to Iceland and go to certain stores is because they're cheaper, and they'll buy things that perhaps are more processed and are a pound for chicken nuggets or whatever it is, which my husband quite likes, actually. Is the way in which people make their money work. And we've had a decade of such low wage growth in this country. I mean, we haven't had a decade of this type of wage growth for over 200 years. People are really feeling the squeeze in terms of how much money they have left over. And they're also time restraints as well, right? So people are working more hours, trying to make those ends meet. And that's where, these sorts of shortcuts and these kinds of foods become a possibility in which to just make it work, make everyday work. So we don't want to punish those people. We want to do something on both sides of those equations. We want to give people more money, make sure they have jobs that pay them well, and we want to make sure that they can buy good produce. There's some places you live and there's like food deserts. It's like hard to get good fresh produce in your neighbourhood. So we need to do something on both sides.
Let's move on to another question. Since we're talking about schools, I'll bring you in on it if you'd like to come in on it. OK, it's a question from Michelle. Is Mordu the right pronunciation?
Mordu. Can the ticking time bomb of mental health and stress in our schools really be solved by even more testing?
Faiza, do you think there's a rising problem of mental stress among children because of exams?
It's not a matter of thinking, it's a fact, isn't it? It's just there, and we need to listen more to teachers. And this is what's happened in the last, 8 years since we've had Conservative-led governments as well, that we have cut and cut and cut. Teachers themselves are under huge amounts of stress. You don't have teaching assistants anymore. It's just a lot more to do with the testing as well. And we need to listen to you about your own stresses as well as what's going on with the children and the kids in your class.
We already assess our children. I think it's frankly insulting to have to bring in a test to do a job that we're already capable of doing. Trust the professionals. We do know what we're doing.
And this is the thing, right? And we hear about mental health all of the time from Theresa May talking about investment in mental health. When I go out and talk to youth services, when I talk to people working in mental health with young people, it's cut. The truth of the matter on the ground is very different to what we hear from government ministers.
OK. Richard Walker, you must see a lot. We'll move on. We go to a question because of where we're sitting. It was likely to come up, and I'm sure some of you are directly involved in it, but let's have the question from Christopher Parker, please.
Hello, yeah. Can we afford to further erode the armed forces? For instance, potential cuts to the helicopter fleet that is produced and operated within Yeovil.
Just tell us about what's operated in Yeovil or in Yeovil.
Well, for instance, here at the base we've got the Merlin and the new Wildcat that are both produced at the Leonardo's factory in Yeovil.
And are threatened with cuts?
The force that I am on, the Wildcat, there's been rumours of the Wildcat fleet being halved to fill, to cover the cost of the amphibious fleets.
Okay. What do you think?
So when I think about issues of the military, me personally, I would prefer if we weren't involved, obviously, in more wars. But the thing is, we obviously need the military. The big thing is about jobs. So the problem is when they make these cuts, they don't plan ahead. They don't think about what this means for people's security. So if they can take those skills and use it in other sectors, then that's the way in which we need to do it. So we often know these things are coming up. And we just let it come to that point where there's a crisis and people are worried about their jobs. And small towns where those are, quite a big share of the jobs, then that has massive implications for those communities. So what I would say is if over time we want to make cuts to the military budget and we want to shift our economy into working on other sectors, then we have to do that with jobs in mind, and we have to do that slowly. But we just don't see those plans there, and it's very frustrating for people that are in those sectors.
We didn't do Brexit tonight. We're coming to the end. Shame. We're just occasionally, even though all the ministers are out there talking, we have to take a break from it. Let's just have a last quick question from you. Robert Thompson.
Are politicians incapable of answering questions? Was it just my imagination?
We've had quite a good display tonight. Let's go round. You start on it, Faiza.
Yeah, I get frustrated as well with that. And I have to say, one thing that they are also very good at is forgetting the history. And I think one of the things I've heard today, hearing teachers and military people, is the big cuts that we've had in the last 7-8 years that are affecting all people working in public services. And the way that Theresa and Camilla even went on tonight is as if those things didn't happen. Those people in the city, bankers in the city, have got it as good as they've ever had it. And yet we are still suffering the impacts of the financial crisis 10 years on.
All right.
And we cannot let them forget that.
Yeah, OK. It wasn't. My thanks to our panel and to all of you who came to this wonderful location tonight. Until next Thursday, from Yeovil or Yeovilton, depending how you like to look at it. From Question Time, good night.